Hey there guys, what's going on? So, recently I was asked by one of my viewers to talk a little bit about vinyl stuff, just things related to all kinds of vinyl matters. I was actually helping advise this person on some turntable things and some basics and whatnot, and they asked me to basically put a video together of sorts to go over the basics of turntables and records and vinyl and upkeep and just basically the kind of the gear stuff, the gear side of it, I guess you might say. So here's this video now where I'll basically kind of run through as much as I can really think of to tell you. I definitely am not an expert by any means, excuse me while I hack up along at the notion, but I do know some things because I've been around turntables and learning about them slowly but surely in my layman's way for the last several years. And basically, when I got started, it was, now you get the backstory and the history and me talking about it for an hour. When I started, it was like most everybody else, unless your parents had a turntable, had a major hi-fi system or something in place already that you might have listened to records on and stuff. You started with your own starter turntable. And that was the case because when I was, coming up through and growing up and starting to listen to music and stuff like that, everybody was onto CDs for the most part. And, my parents and my family included, of course. So that's where I came from, but eventually, and of course I can't remember how this ended up happening, I got a slight tinge of a notion to be interested in records and everything about them and learning about them and such. So I started with a very beginner's turntable, built-in speakers, just a needle that I'm sure would cause nightmares and hot sweats to vinyl enthusiasts everywhere to see it, the whole 9 yards, the way that, kids start and stuff. And I laid it aside for a while, but then there was just something that happened and it started to take off, and I started listening to more old stuff, Neil Young records, modern stuff, Justin Townes, Earl, bringing in all kinds of different things, and I eventually decided that, hey, you know what, for a birthday, I should upgrade to the real deal. Get a real turntable and really learn about it and get a sense of what this whole real turntable game is about. And then, of course, hence along came the Audio-Technica AT-LP120 USB direct drive professional turntable. Couldn't tell I was reading that off the front, could you? And it has served me very, very well for the last several years. It is by no means a high-end turntable or one of those things you're going to bring home to mom. It's not one of those hyper-professional deals. It is purely middle of the road, good for what it is, great for what it is, in fact, at about $250, which, considering the price of so many high-end, professional, awesome tables, is a drop in the bucket. So I've been here ever since with this turntable right here. I'll give you just a little bit of a closer view here. I try not to use this camera for too much motion because I can't follow it, but because I have to follow it over on my phone. But basically everything is the same as when I first got it. I changed slip mats a while back, but actually found for some reason that for whatever it was, the slip mat that I had substituted to, which was a Jack White Third Man Records slip mat, was actually causing the 33 1/3 speed to run too slowly. So slip mats are a very cautious thing. If that's the tip here, if I'm going to be giving you long-winded tips, that's tip number one. Definitely be careful with your slip mats. Stay with the factory one if at all possible, because that will work for you. That's definitely something you want to be mindful of. I changed the little 45 adapter to a decibels per minute record label one, which is Wilco's record label, but otherwise it's the same deal as it's been. real simple controls. You're on, your switch on is here, lights up for your selection, 33 or 45. You have tone control, pitch, all kinds of stuff that you really don't end up messing with over on that side especially. The arm is definitely something to maneuver carefully, be very careful about as you're setting it up and adjusting it. I've definitely had my share of initial issues with it. I came to the point where 98, 99% of the time it's great, doesn't have trouble with records. Certain times it will skip. I don't know if that's just the integrity of the record. It could be more than anything, because it's great so often and so much of the time. But with these, you can usually adjust with the weight on the back here, the counterweight, or the anti. Doing a terrible job of showing you. And the anti-skate there, or like I said, the counterweight. If you didn't see that when I was pointing the wrong way, you can adjust with those, and they'll give you ideas for, where it should be. And skating I've never needed, but it varies with different ones. Definitely be mindful of that. Be mindful of your needle, all that. My needle, the basic factory needle, has been superb for me in all the years that I've possessed it. Never really had a problem. Should probably upgrade at some point, but always be careful of that as well. That you're not, the weight is not too heavy. Just always Google, always research with that kind of thing. Otherwise, you have a little target light here, which can shine across the record if you're viewing it in a dark room, so you can see the grooves. But don't leave it on too long, so it gets insanely hot very quickly. Or so I found. Start and stop goes like that. And pretty easy setup, of course. And then you put the record on. I was going to demonstrate, but you know this part. And then you just take the needle, find your groove, and drop, and then try not to drop your needle on the way back by. But to pull back here again, so this is the table that I've had for the last couple of years, like I said. And it's upkeep is pretty simple with all this. I mean, like I said, I am a layman at best right now when it comes to these things, so I'm not going to know the ins and outs of every bit of upkeep. If there's a tip or trick to cleaning or something that I should know, by all means, leave a comment. But for the most part, it's always good to keep your cover on when you're not listening to your records and such, if it permits, what your space is. And always just like just a nice soft cloth. I'm actually going to use this to talk about a different thing here, but something like that, or something that's just very gentle but nice, and it can just take off just the dust across the top. They do get much dustier much more quickly than you might think, but that's just that's a simple fix. You just do that from time to time. Keeps it real nice. Just shake out the slip mat every so often. And, upkeep with that is really just simple as simple could be. As for speakers, I actually have a part of these that technically doesn't have the best signal readout or signal coming out of it that I could have. I just recently learned this. So I don't take that away from it. But as far as setup goes with speakers, originally there is... I'm trying not to pull out everything here because the wiring is a little bit funny. But there's basically a cord that runs out of the back of this turntable. And initially I had a pair of bookshelf Bose speakers, real basic, just clipped into the back of those, red and white connectors, that kind of thing. They slipped into that, and the Bose did great for what it was for the time, but you need something that is definitely going to be geared to these kind of listening pursuits. You need something that's really going to have that quality to give you the different tones, give you the different sound. Doesn't really leave you with that hollow feeling of in your sound and in the music that you're listening to. And I personally, for a bit, have had great success with these Dayton audio speakers here. I'm trying to pull pull that back just a little so you can see it. We'll put that down though, so it's heavy. And they're pretty cheap, but very, good for what they are. Again, if I run by anything with this stuff, it's just that I'm very much behind the notion of, I right in the dead set in the middle of the road. I don't have this up and up crazy expensive stuff that does great, but I've got stuff that gets the job done and allows me to listen to great music. And that's all you really need when you're getting started, or you're a hobbyist who has a lot of fun listening to this stuff. And these have been a great upgrade, cheap, good reviews on Amazon, good reviews overall. They do come with a little bit more of a complex attachment. There are these red and black wires that thread in through these ports, I guess you'd say, that kind of come in and they kind of, they like pinch the wire together and hold them in there like that, which kind of doesn't make the wire look good over time. And I would say the one issue that I've steadily encountered with the left one, especially my left port, is that occasionally if the sound is too high or if it's out of place, or sometimes the wiring's a little funny and it will drop the signal out of it, which is really unfortunate, sometimes. But that's the one main drawback, and it does require a little more assembly for a basic hobbyist, but I am right in that wheelhouse. So if I can do it, you can absolutely do it, because they feed right here. Let's see if I can aim this into this little amp here. Ignore the shape-shifting ball there. And they feed right into this amp, this little lapel amp, which is not, like I said, is not the most ideal, as I've learned recently, but can do it does the job decently well, even if it's not the right quality of signal, which I'm going to be looking into in the future, or the right type of signal, I should say. But with this, both the threads, like I showed you in the ports on the back of the speaker, they basically come out and they thread into the back. Each one threads correspondingly, red and black with the left and right port, as well as the initial wire that I mentioned here with the turntable, which leads to the two plugs that go red to white into the red and the white spaces. And then once that's on, you've got that connected, you can fiddle a little bit with the buttons here. I should get in close. You can fiddle with these knobs for some tone and some different things, and you push this button in for the channel, and it's much better with the channel pushed in. You're on the other channel, that's a better deal there. But pretty basic, nothing too crazy about that. The assembly is not hard. It may look a little bit daunting on the surface, but when you're done with it, and you will get there, I'd say the toughest parts are maybe just adjusting your speaker system, getting it hooked up, and the weighting system on the tone arm of the turntable. Those are going to be your hardest parts, but if anything, I find that it's a very rewarding accomplishment, and it's really, hopefully, not going to get you to the point of tearing your hair out. Sometimes there are issues with the needles, but otherwise it should be fine. And that is really, I think, the most I can tell you about that whole thing. Just once this is all set up, you drop your needle and go. And the biggest inconvenience is, of course, that you do have to change the record. It does not change on its own, of course. But it's very basic, very straightforward. Just clean with a soft cloth across the top. They do get kind of scratched and crappy looking after a while, but not really a big aesthetic deal. You want to make sure the internal parts are working. That's the whole, the crux of that biscuit. And basically the only other thing I would tell you before I wrap this video up here is just when you're cleaning your records, and I actually made a video about this a long time ago on my This Dog Ate My Vlogs page, so if you're curious to sort of see a demo of it, I would refer you to that video of when I did this. But basically, the only other thing that I would suggest as far as upkeep is when you have one of your records, take this recent feature on my vinyl unboxing thing with the Tweety Project and Diamond Light Part 1. You take your record, obviously, out of its sleeve, on something softer, you know, for the appropriate to the record. You lay it down, and you want to take isopropyl alcohol. Everybody has a different method for this. I can tell you that this works. To the extent of my knowledge, this works. I've had no issue with it. So I'm always glad to provide that because I know that this works, instead of, because I was there, you know, I've been there, wandering through like 60 different things, like this and this combination, this witch's brew, what's, you know, the best thing for me to use to clean my records. This works. Basically, you take this, and you dab a little bit of it onto something soft, a nice soft, something cotton, something with a just real soft, gentle edge to it, and you dab a little bit of that on. And like I said, I'd refer you to the other video to see a direct demo of it, but you would run, and there are two different ways you could run it up and down, but people most often suggest that you run it along the groove and just sort of clean inward along the groove, and then kind of move it along until you've covered the whole circumference of the record. And that helps clean them off. Oftentimes it's a prerequisite for used records, of course. I definitely got to clean a ton of mine coming up. But it's also sometimes good for new records because of the way that they're finished and stuff. It's just a good way to do it for how it plays on your turntable. And that's just another good thing to remember. So, off the top of my head, that's about all I can think of to really tell you guys. Thank you to the person who watched one of my videos and left me those comments when we commented back and forth and wanted me to make this video. I'm always glad to pass along the insights that I have. Just Audio-Technica LP 120, great, solid buy. The Dayton audio speakers, solid buy. Really solid across the board. Maybe switch the amp up a little bit, as I've learned recently, but otherwise, it gives you a good listening experience. It's a nice thing to settle down with at night or whenever, and just to listen to some great old or contemporary stuff. And I couldn't be more pleased with it. And that's why I do all the vinyl stuff that I do. So, thank you guys for watching this video. Thank you to the person, again, who suggested that I do it. I was glad to put it out there, kind of do something a little bit more updated about my gear since I first did it back on my old channel. And if you have any other questions or something that I forgot, of course, leave me a comment, message me, whatever it is. I'll be glad to help in whatever way that I can. And as always, stay tuned for much more very soon.